Most men never expect it. But one of the hardest people to date is not someone who cheats, lies, or disrespects you. It's the partner who keeps you at arm's length, while pretending the relationship is fine. This is the reality of dating, someone with an avoidant attachment style. An avoidant partner isn't cold in the beginning. In fact, they can come across as charming, independent, and confident. But as the relationship deepens, you start noticing a pattern. They withdraw when you get too close. They dodge conversations about feelings, and they act uncomfortable with intimacy. You might think they're just busy or not ready, but the truth is, avoidance runs much deeper. Psychologically, avoidant individuals fear dependency and closeness. They believe getting too attached will cost them their freedom or expose them to pain. So instead of leaning in, they pull away. And as amen, this can leave you in a constant state of confusion. One day, she's warm and affectionate. The next day, she's distant and unreachable, and you're left wondering what you did wrong. This push-hand-pull dynamic eats away at your confidence if you don't understand it. That's why coping with an avoidant partner requires more than patience. It demands clarity, emotional strength, and the ability to see the game for what its early signs really is. 1. Spotting the early signs of avoidance. The first step to coping with an avoidant partner is learning how to spot the red flags early. Many men mistake avoidance for independence, but there's a difference. Independence is healthy. It means a person has their own goals, routines, and self-sufficiency. Avoidance, on the other hand, shows up as emotional distance, fear of closeness, and resistance to deeper connection. Early on, an avoidant woman might seem like the perfect catch. She doesn't cling, she respects your space, and she keeps things lighthearted. At first, this feels refreshing, but over time, you start noticing cracks in the foundation. Whenever their relationship inches toward intimacy, she pulls back. She might change the subject when you talk about the future, or suddenly become too busy after you've had a meaningful night together. These are not coincidences. They are patterns. Avoidance is often rooted in fear. The closer you try to get, the more threatened she feels. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because closeness feels risky to her. If you don't recognize this dynamic early, you'll waste months, even years, trying to fix her behavior, instead of deciding whether you can actually live with it. Now, imagine you've been dating a woman for 3 months. Things are going well, but the moment you bring up meeting each other's families, her entire energy changes. She suddenly becomes distant, less responsive, and makes excuses to avoid spending time together. She isn't busy. She's avoiding the deeper level of commitment that meeting family represents. Recognizing this pattern for what it is saves you from blaming yourself. The sooner you can tell the difference between a woman who's simply independent and one who's avoidant, the sooner you'll know how to adjust your expectations or whether to keep investing your time at all. 2. Understanding avoidance. Understanding the psychology behind avoidance. To deal with an avoidant partner, you have to understand what's driving her behavior. Avoidance doesn't come out of nowhere. It's usually tied to her attachment style, the way she learned to connect with people emotionally, often shaped by childhood experiences. Avoidant individuals grow up believing that closeness equals danger. Maybe they had parents who dismissed their feelings, or they were only shown love when they achieved something, not for who they were. Over time, they learned to protect themselves by shutting down emotionally. To them, intimacy feels like a trap. So, when you try to get closer, their instinct isn't to open up, it's to pull away. This doesn't mean she doesn't care for you. Many avoidant partners do love deeply, but the way they show it is different. Instead of expressing affection openly, they often prefer distance, distraction, or control. What confuses most men is the mixed signals. Warm one moment, cold the next. That inconsistency isn't random. It's our defense mechanism. When you understand the psychology behind it, you stop personalizing her behavior. You realize her pulling back isn't necessarily because you failed, but because closeness makes her anxious. This knowledge gives you clarity. You can stop begging for answers she can't give, and instead, focus on how her patterns affect you. Imagine you're dating a woman who lights up when you plan a casual date, dinner, a movie, something simple. But the moment you suggest a weekend getaway together, she suddenly looks uncomfortable and says she needs some space. The problem isn't the trip itself. It's what the trip represents. More intimacy, more togetherness, and less emotional control on her part. Her avoidance isn't about the plan. It's about the deeper meaning behind it. Understanding this psychology doesn't solve the problem, but it equips you to handle it without losing your self-worth in the process. Self-worth. 3. Separating her behavior from your self-worth. One of the biggest traps men fall into when dating an avoidant partner is blaming themselves for her distance. When she pulls back, cancels plans, or seems uninterested, it's natural to think, what did I do wrong? Am I not enough? But this mindset is dangerous. If you let her avoidance dictate how you see yourself, you'll slowly destroy your confidence. Here's the truth. Her behavior says far more about her internal struggles than it does about your value as a man. Avoidant partners aren't pushing away because you're unattractive, unworthy, or doing everything wrong. They're pulling away because closeness threatens their sense of safety. If you start tying your self-worth to her unpredictable actions, you'll end up in a cycle of self-doubt that eats away at your masculinity. This is why emotional detachment is critical. You have to separate her patterns from your identity. Instead of asking, why am I not good enough for her to stay close? You need to ask, why am I tolerating this push-pull dynamic? And how is it affecting me? That shift takes the power out of her hands and puts it back in yours. Picture this. You plan something thoughtful, maybe cooking dinner at your place. She comes, but instead of enjoying it, she seems distant. Scrolling on her phone, barely engaging, you feel invisible. The immediate reaction might be shame. I must be boring. I didn't do enough. But the reality is, it's not about you. Her avoidance is what's creating that emotional wall, not your lack of effort. When you understand that her withdrawal is about her fears, not your worth, you can step back without self-blame. That doesn't mean you ignore the problem. It means you stop sacrificing your self-esteem for someone else's unresolved issues. Chasing trap 4. Avoiding the trap of chasing. When an avoidant partner pulls away, most men make the same mistake. They chase. It feels almost automatic. She becomes distant, and you respond by doubling your effort. More texts, more calls, more gestures to prove how much you care. But here's the problem. The harder you chase, the further she runs. This happens because avoidance thrives in distance. To her, intimacy feels like pressure. So when you react by closing the gap and trying to pull her closer, she experiences that as suffocating. What feels like love to you feels like a trap to her. The dynamic quickly spirals into frustration. The more energy you pour in, the less you get back, and soon you're caught in an exhausting cycle where you're doing all the work. Many men can relate to this. You find yourself waiting for her replies, rereading old messages just to feel connected, and constantly questioning whether she still cares. Instead of feeling like a partner, you start feeling like a pursuer, chasing someone who seems to slip further out of reach with every step. The key to breaking this cycle is restraint. You have to resist the urge to chase her approval or attention. That doesn't mean ignoring her or playing games. It means holding back when your instinct is to lean in and giving space instead of smothering. By doing this, you protect your energy and avoid feeding the very pattern that pushes her away. Chasing doesn't create closeness. It reinforces distance. The men who cope best with avoidant partners are the ones who learn to pause, breathe, and let the space be what it is, instead of trying to close it out of emotional independence, desperation. 5. Building emotional independence. If you're dating an avoidant partner, emotional independence isn't just helpful, it's survival. When she pulls back, the worst thing you can do is let your entire mood collapse with a distance. If her silence makes you restless, if her withdrawal makes you desperate, then you've handed her complete control over your emotional state. That's no way for a man to live. Emotional independence means that no matter what she does, you remain steady. You don't fall apart when she goes quiet. You don't feel worthless when she avoids closeness. You stand on your own foundation. This isn't about being cold or heartless. It's about making sure your sense of happiness doesn't rely entirely on her presence. Many men reading this will relate to the feeling of waiting by the phone, hoping for her reply, only to feel anxious and empty when it never comes. That sinking frustration builds because you've tied your peace to her actions. The way out is to build a life that's fulfilling without her constant validation. Work on your goals, invest in your friendships, pursue your hobbies, and nurture your health. When you're emotionally independent, her pulling away doesn't leave you broken. It just gives you space to focus on yourself. A strong man isn't one who tolerates endless withdrawal. It's one who knows how to stay balanced in the face of it. The irony is the more self-sufficient you are, the less avoidant partners feel the need to run. Emotional independence takes away the pressure they fear, while giving you the strength to stay grounded no matter what. Without it, you'll always be at the mercy of her moods. With it, you hold your power, any cross-eyed, and she has no choice but to respect it. 6. Communicating without cornering her. One of the hardest parts about dating an avoidant partner is communication. Every man knows how frustrating it feels to want answers, to want closeness, but every time you bring it up, she either shuts down, changes the subject, or distances herself even more. It's like the more honest you try to be, the more walls she builds. This happens because avoidant individuals often interpret direct emotional conversations as a threat. Where you see healthy communication, she feels pressure and fear of losing control. The result, she retreats. That doesn't mean you should stay silent, but it does mean you need to change how you communicate if you want any progress. The key is balance. You have to express yourself without making her feel cornered. That means keeping your tone calm, your timing thoughtful, and your words clear, but not overwhelming. Instead of dropping heavy questions in the middle of a stressful day, wait for moments where the mood is lighter. Instead of long speeches about everything you feel, stick to what's most important and communicate it in a steady way. Relatable to many men is this scenario. You've tried opening up about feeling ignored, and instead of hearing you out, she accuses you of being too needy or overreacting. That reaction stings, and it makes you want to push harder to prove your point, but pushing harder only fuels the cycle. What works better is stating your needs calmly, then giving her space to process without pressure. Communicating with an avoidant partner requires patience, but more importantly, it requires emotional control. You have to say what needs to be said without chasing validation from her response. When you master this, you stop sounding like you're begging for closeness and start sounding like a man who knows his worth. Set boundaries. 7. Setting boundaries and non-negotiables. Too many men lose themselves when dating an avoidant partner because they never set clear boundaries. They think patience will fix everything. They think if they wait long enough, she'll finally open up and love them the way they need. But here's the cold truth. If you don't set standards for how you want to be treated, you'll end up tolerating endless cycles of withdrawal, excuses, and disappointment. Men often say, I don't want to push her away by asking for too much. But if asking for basic respect and emotional consistency is too much, then you're already lowering your value. The problem isn't that she's avoidant. It's that you've allowed her patterns to dictate the entire relationship. That's not love. That's self-neglect. A man without boundaries will bend over backward, accept scraps of affection, and convince himself it's better than nothing. But deep down, he knows he's running on empty. If this sounds familiar, it's time to wake up. Stop making excuses for behavior that leaves you feeling drained and unappreciated. Your peace of mind, your dignity, and your emotional health should never be negotiable. Setting boundaries doesn't mean ultimatums or threats. It means drawing a clear line. This is what I can accept, and this is what I won't. If she disappears for days without explanation, you don't chase. You decide whether that aligns with the kind of relationship you want. If she constantly avoids serious conversations, you don't beg. You decide whether that's the type of partner you're willing to commit to. Boundaries are how men protect their worth. Without them, you'll always feel like you're fighting for scraps. With them, you take back your power and make it clear you'd rather be alone than trapped in a relationship that starves you. When to walk away 8. Knowing when to walk away. There comes a point in every relationship with an avoidant partner where you have to make a decision. Stay and keep managing the push-pull dynamic or walk away for your own peace. Most men drag this choice out for far too long. They cling to hope, waiting for her to change, waiting for the day she finally lets her guard down. But often that day never comes. The reality is this: love alone is not enough to sustain a relationship where one person constantly runs from closeness. You can be patient. You can be supportive. You can even adjust your expectations. But if she refuses to meet you halfway, you'll spend years stuck in emotional limbo. That's not a relationship. That's survival mode. Men need to stop fearing the end. Walking away doesn't mean you failed, and it doesn't mean you weren't good enough. It means you value your sanity and self-respect more than endless waiting. It means you've recognized that her avoidance is her battle to fight, not yours to fix. Staying with someone who continually withholds intimacy, connection, and effort will drain you. Leaving, on the other hand, frees you to find a partner who's actually ready to love without fear. And that's the kind of relationship every man deserves. Walking away is not weakness. It's strength. The kind that says, I know my worth, and I won't settle for less. Dating an avoidant partner will test you more than almost any other relationship dynamic. You'll question yourself. You'll doubt your worth. And if you're not careful, you'll waste years trying to unlock someone who doesn't even want to be opened. Here's the controversial truth. Sometimes the most toxic relationships aren't with people who yell, cheat, or betray. They're with theonies who silently starve you of love while convincing you to stay. That kind of slow, emotional starvation can be more damaging than open betrayal, because it makes you believe you're the problem when you're not. Men, you need to understand something. Love is not meant to feel like constant guessing. If her pattern is withdrawal, distance, and excuses, then you have to ask yourself why you're tolerating it. Is it love, or is it fear of being alone? That answer changes everything. I want to hear from you. If you've ever dealt with an avoidant partner, share your experience in the comments. I'll be reading through and reaching out because these are the kinds of conversations men rarely have, yet they need the most. At the end of the day, your life, your time, and your emotional health are worth far more than waiting for someone who's too afraid to love you back. The choice is always in your hands. Stay stuck in confusion or step into clarity and strength.